All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're diving into a really provocative theory from a book called The Great Taking. The basic claim? That the entire global financial system, the one we all rely on, might just be designed to put every single one of our investments at risk. So let's unpack how the author builds this incredible argument.
The whole theory really boils down to this one simple but pretty unsettling question. When you buy a stock, a bond, anything, do you really own it? The book we're looking at today argues that the answer is a very complicated and, frankly, a pretty alarming no.
So, where did this whole idea come from? Well, the author points to one massive geopolitical event as the key that unlocks this entire story: the decision to freeze Russia's central bank assets right in the heart of Europe.
By the end of 2023, the EU had locked down a staggering 210 billion euros of these Russian assets. But here's the crucial detail, the part that matters for this theory: it's where this money was held. It was sitting inside a Belgian firm called Euroclear, which is what's known as a central securities depository.
Now, from the book's perspective, this was way more than just a political sanction. The author argues it was a real-world stress test, a live-fire drill even, for the exact same mechanisms that could, in theory, be used to seize everyone's assets during the next big financial crisis. To really wrap your head around how that could even be possible, we need to look under the hood. We've got to explore the hidden plumbing of our financial system, specifically how your ownership of, say, a stock is actually recorded.
For years now, the whole financial world has shifted to something called dematerialization. The days of getting a fancy paper stock certificate to lock away in a safe, those are long gone. Today, your ownership is just a digital blip, an entry in a massive electronic ledger.
And this really shows you how indirect your ownership is. So, you buy a stock through your broker. Simple enough. But your broker doesn't actually hold it in a little box with your name on it. Nope. They hold it in a giant, commingled, pooled account at a central securities depository, a CSD. All their clients' assets are just mixed together. And here is the absolute crux of the argument, based on the author's legal analysis. This setup means you don't have direct legal title to your stocks. Instead, what you have is a contractual claim, basically an IOU from your broker, for a piece of that giant, undifferentiated pool of assets.
Okay, and this is where the theory really takes a dark turn. The book argues that laws, all around the world, have been quietly changed and harmonized to turn this system into a trap that benefits one very specific group above everyone else: secured creditors. And look, this isn't just a fringe idea. Even the New York Fed said it out loud way back in 2006. They stated, and I'm quoting here, that if your broker fails, the claims of their creditors have priority over your claim to what you thought were your securities.
So let's see how that pecking order actually works. When a firm goes bankrupt, the secured creditors, and we're usually talking about the big banks here, get to jump to the front of the line. They get to seize assets first, and they're protected by something called safe harbor laws. And you, the security holder, you get knocked to the back of the line. You become an unsecured creditor, just hoping to get a tiny piece of whatever might be left over.
The book then points to this whole web of harmonized laws, from the UCC in the United States to the CSDR in Europe and beyond. The author alleges that the whole point of this global legal framework is to make one thing absolutely legally airtight: that the secured creditors always get their money first. So you have the structure, you have the legal framework. How could this whole thing actually unravel? Well, the source lays out a frighteningly fast domino effect, where just one single default could set off a chain reaction, a system-wide seizure of assets. Here's the predicted cascade. It starts when a major firm defaults. Immediately, we're talking instantly, automated systems kick in and seize collateral from those pooled accounts to cover the losses. And because of those safe harbor laws, no court, no judge can step in to stop it. The end result? The assets in that pool, including yours, are just gone. You're left holding a worthless IOU against a company that's already bankrupt. Now, if this sounds like something out of a movie, the author points to real-world examples. Remember MF Global back in 2011? Client funds that were supposed to be segregated, kept totally safe and separate, were just taken to cover the firm's own terrible bets. A lot of people lost everything. And just think about the sheer scale of this. During the 2008 Lehman Brothers collapse, J.P. Morgan, as a secured creditor, legally seized $8.6 billion of client collateral. And because of Safe Harbor, it was all perfectly legal. Those clients had absolutely no way to get it back.
So when you put all of these pieces together, the pooled accounts, the legal fine print, the historical precedents, it all leads to the author's central and most startling conclusion. It's what they call the Great Taking.
The ultimate thesis of the book is that this is not a bug, it's not a mistake in the system, it's a feature. The author alleges that this entire global financial architecture was deliberately engineered to allow for a perfectly legal, completely automated seizure of the public's assets by secured creditors the next time a major crisis hits.
Now, the book doesn't just end on that dire warning. It actually includes a call to action. The author suggests people should demand true legal segregation of their assets, challenge these safe harbor laws in the courts and in public, and most importantly, recognize that the biggest threat to our property today isn't military, it's algorithmic and legal.
And so, that really leaves us with the core question of this entire theory. Is the system that we all depend on built on a catastrophic but ultimately unintended flaw? Or is it something else, a deliberate design? According to this book, the answer to that question determines whether your assets are ever truly yours. Thanks for tuning in,